Welcome to the Black Open University Show, rebuilding education from an African place of being. Welcome to the Black Open University Show, rebuilding education from an African place of being. Build deep and complete.
Do you know of the water of life?
What's the big idea? What's the big idea? Original again, start from the heart. Not true indeed. I see, I feel. Mathematics, matrix, institutes, patterns. 1, 2, 3, you learn classic.
Welcome to the Black Open University Show, rebuilding education from an African place of being. Welcome to the Black Open University Show, building education from an African place of being.
Dip down, dip and down, dip and down. We're in there. Dip down, dip and down, dip and down. We're in there. Inside of who you are. Inside of who you are. Time has its own way to be. Gracious behavior is the savior. It seems to be inside of who you are. The sky is like a storybook with sand in your eyes. See the light, come and see sunrise inside of who you are. Dip down, dip and down, dip and down. We're in there. Dip down, dip and down, dip and down. We're in there. I said inside of who you are. Sun dips to the magic of the moon. Perfect magenta. In the center is womanhood inside of who you are. A child resides beside still waters. With spiritual eyes, come and see a sunrise inside of who you are. seems to be inside of who you are. The sky is like a storybook with sand in your eyes. See the light, come see sunrise inside of who you are.
Welcome to the Black Open University show
on Bless.
Rebuilding education from an African place of being.
On Bless Radio.
Yes, welcome. This is Astamari Bartekun. Welcome to the Black Open University show. It's a pleasure to be here on Bless Radio once again, moving forward with the show cycle. We do have a special guest today, but before we get to all of that, we have to open with our salute, the Sehlamta, the YehTehwagi Sehlamta, warrior greeting. YehTehwagi Sehlamta, Exir Yimasagan Hashima Tewagi Asab. Creator be praised, respect the warrior idea. We've got a very special show this evening, and we're going to move quite swiftly into it. So, without further ado, let me explain some of the things that we'll be doing in this show. We'll begin with the Gzat. The show has several parts. Gzat means province. We've got a very brief talking to do about space and the geometries of space, particularly the moon cycle, phases of the moon. We will be talking through that very briefly. I'll be updating you on some news. We like to go through our news. Zena Gize, next phase of the show. Zena Gize, the news cycle. And the news actually is that we're closer to the festival. But we'll talk about that in a moment. No problem. After the news, we'll touch into just a short review of some of our flagship courses at the Black Open University. In particular, we'll be speaking to the level being 9. This is the GCSE math class, focused on teaching math through creative projects. It's a STEAM learning. That is STEM plus the arts, science, technology, engineering and math using African cultural arts. So we'll be featuring some reasonings from things that took place today and more recently, just to give you a flavor of how we do what we do. And I said we have a special guest in the center, in the studio. So you'll be hearing more from her before she gets to rest. It's a bit late, but I thought, yes, it's that time. We can have special guests in the studio, in the mighty Bless studio. Big up to the management and engineers, all crew. Big up to all the DJs that have come before. Yeah, we love it. A very smooth cruising station. Everything set professional. So, after we do those things about the courses, the flagship courses, we'll be moving into our special feature. This special feature today, we're talking about historically black colleges. Well, actually, we're really talking about what's involved in running higher level institutions that come from an African place of being. So I'm going to showcase some sampled commentary around the historically black colleges and universities in the States. There's been a lot of talking around them. I don't know if you're aware, but there's been some talking around them recently, around their funding and things like this. We're going to touch into that. I've got a very long feature which I'm going to play, and then we have some commentary around that. And yeah, that's pretty much the show. That feature is a lengthy one, so you've got a lot to tune into. And this is the show. I'm coming in a bit tight this one. It's a clean cut show. Some of the things we normally do, I will not necessarily do them with as much time because I want to get to that feature. And that feature, well, that feature is something that's, it touches many issues. So I want to give it good time. While we're flowing, let's just touch in with a little music just to relax the vibes. Let's flow.
Build deep and complete. Welcome to the Black Open University show
on Bless Radio.
Son of
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, we're keeping in a flow. As I said, the show is a little different. Normally, I have that ambient landscape, but today we're not going to do the ambient landscape. We're coming in clean sounds, clean reasoning. I would like to welcome my special guest. When she fix herself up, hold on. So, I'd like to welcome my special guest, Yasmin Yaya. Are you on the mic, Yasmin? Can you give us a sound check?
Hello.
Oh, hello, baby voice. Hello there, Hashima. How are you?
Good.
Good. Well, greet the people, please.
Hashima, good evening, everybody.
Yes, this is my little one, my youngest. How you mean? So we're on a bit of a rolling this time here, but it's a special excursion, and I thought it'd be nice for the one to see the studio and get involved. We've been doing things today, so I thought, yes, take part, get involved. So I'm going to do my first part, as I said before. We'll touch in with Yasmin in a moment, but just to say, with the Gzat reasoning, very simply, we observe the phases of the moon on a weekly basis, and we do this because the moon is the closest object outside of the Earth, other than satellites, but the closest significant object influencing the Earth in a special dance with the Earth. And we don't spend, as people, natural born scientists, we don't spend enough time just looking up and observing the phase. And sometimes even when you look up, you can't see it. So this is a thing that we need to be consistent in checking its position and dynamics, and observing dynamics that may be happening as a result of that, of where it is. If you're not observing it, then you can't observe the coincidence of things. I had mentioned before some coincidence I noticed with the phase of moon and certain weather patterns. And I would be very, very pleased to hear from ones who observe similar things. So still, I have to point out, I'm not one pushing the astrology side of this kind of talking. I am determined to keep this on the physical science. So if you can work with that, I'm very, very interested in all things related to this. So we're in the position where the moon appears to be waning, a waning crescent moon. We are looking at approximately 30% illumination, and waning means it appears to be losing its illumination. The moon is illuminated by the sun, and it's due to the angle, the position of the moon relative to the earth and the sun, that we get the appearance of illumination. So in its phasing, it appears to get brighter to full moon, and then appears to decline to new moon, where it is in shadow, and then back round again, growing in illumination, back to full moon, and so it goes round and round in this pattern. It's a mathematics, a study and application of patterns. So just that alone is a math, and it's one that people live by. Some cultures are bound into the cycles of the moon in very profound ways, and many life cycles are bound into this as well in some way, one way or the other. Life respects this thing, this dynamic. So we touched it, Gzat. Sometimes we go a bit deeper, talking about other planets in the solar system, where they are, any interesting alignments or incidents that are taking place, or broader star constellations that would be interesting to see, that are coming visible. We're coming to some very clear skies. So next week, in the next cycle, I will definitely return to more in-depth astronomy observations. For those who don't know, we use Stellarium, the planetary software. So I recommend everyone who listens to the show downloads Stellarium, and basically has a planetarium on their computer. Great fun. So Yes, we're rolling. My one here, Yasmin, she's itching to talk about her business. We've been doing things. I thought there's a couple of things I wanted to speak to her about, and this part of the show is we're rolling into things to do with the actual courses, and this is something. The level being 9 class is the one where I think Yasmin could speak to some things that touch to this. But before we do that, Yasmin, you've been doing some making. We've been making the Mantis memory matrix. For those who don't know, it's a cube made from 27 points. And you seem to like this, and you started to do something with this. So share with ones what you've been doing.
Yeah, so lately I've been using like incense spare sticks to make the Mantis matrix cube. So one of the steps I had to go through is I took one of the sticks and I sellotaped it to another one, but made it a right angle.
Yasmin is making a right angle with the hands. I know we can't see that because on this show we do lock off the camera. I hope you don't mind, audience, but we lock off the camera. But I tell you, Yasmin is making a hand sign. Thank you. Right angles, you were saying.
Yes. So we used right angle. I used lots of right angles because
90 degrees.
Yes, because there was lots of squares. The first step I had to go through, the second step I had to go through, well, the first step was I had to keep on repeating that and make loads of squares. And then I had to do it inside, in the middle, and like make it like all equal. And then after that it comes to the tricky bit where you have to make it all stand up and make it all very straight. After that we stand it up with sellotape. The way I done it is I got sellotape, I put the stick up, there was the square, I put the stick up on the corner where the sellotape is wrapped up. Then I take some sellotape and I wrap it around the stick, but then the ends of the sellotape I push down onto the corner of the square. Then that carries on making cubes.
I was quite impressed by that. I must admit, when Yasmin says she's using the incense stick, she means when the incense is burnt down and you got the little end piece, these little end piece of the stick, she collect them, and so we have a load of them, and we can make some stuff with it. And so this thing, to make it into a flat shape is one thing, but to try and make it into a 3-dimensional thing is a whole different thing. And so Yasmin has been exploring this 3-dimension engineering task. Go on, what you saying?
And once you've done lots of that, you put it together in a way that it turns into a big cube. And then you can see in the inside where there's a line, 2 squares going that way, going forward, and 2 squares going sideways.
Left and right too. Yes. Yeah, no. I was impressed with the way you did that with just sticks and sellotape. It didn't look as easy as you got your intention there, so you started to make it happen, and that's good. We love that. Yeah, and you had done something before. This is not the first thing you've done with those sticks. What was the first thing that you made with them?
The first thing I done was, it was nearly the same, but instead I was making a star and then making it point up to the top.
Like a pyramid?
Yes, but with a star at the bottom, not a square.
A star-based pyramid?
Yes.
Yeah.
So it was nearly the same thing. I just made quite a lot of triangles in this. So the last step was I had to get 3 or 4 in incense sticks, and I put them up so I chose a sensible corner to put them where it would be equal.
Okay.
It wouldn't look so wobbly and twisty.
Yeah.
I would put them upwards, so I would stick the bottom bit down of the stick onto the points of the star. Then I would put them upwards, going like the pyramid, and I'd take some sellotape and wrap it around the top.
Right.
And then once I've done that, I'm gonna go back to how to make the star. The star was not so tricky, but I went through quite a lot of steps with the star, making lots of triangles, and then it made a star. But I don't exactly remember what the inside was like, but I liked the star I made. It was very nice.
Yeah, I thought it was nice too. Well, Yasmin, thank you for sharing that. You've got a bit more to share in a moment. I'm going to move swiftly on so we can get through your inputs to this show. As I said to the ones, we've got quite a large special feature, so I need to get to that to give it time to flow. But thank you for that, Yasmin. Hashima, well done. And we're looking forward to more of those kind of engineering things. I know you are the original hands-on maker person, so yeah, there's more to come for that. Anyway, so I wanted to just touch into the news. I had said in the last cycle that we have our festival. I'm not going to read out all of the festival points because in the next show I'll do that again. I did it in the last show, and in the next one I will go through it in detail. But essentially, we have a festival, a creative learning festival, coming up from the 6th of March to the 15th of March. And pretty much every day there will be something fantastic happening at the Chestnut Community Centre. A whole range of events. Things such as learning STEM through dance. That means learning science, technology, engineering and math through dance. Learning STEM through football and other sporting games. We have special discussions around that. We have our high altitude balloon launch. Much anticipated. We'll be launching our high altitude balloon, which is a balloon that goes to the edge of the regular basic atmosphere of the Earth and starts to touch that which one would consider outer space. It's coming and looks like this. We're going to send cameras up and film the journey. Fantastic. We'll be launching this in the Science Week. We will be having a special talk on financial intelligence for youth, for young people, and cryptocurrency introduction. So introducing youth to cryptocurrency in harmony with their family. We're going to set a program where young people can start to manage cryptocurrency and get the feeling for that. It's the future. Come on now. Technology, blockchain. If you don't know what I'm saying, blockchain, then you need to come and find out about this thing. Your children, if they know, then they're on some kind of special point. And if they don't know, then probably someone will be managing their blockchain. And be careful. You need to be on top of this thing. So we'll have events like that. We will be having, we'll be having a very special dance evening, a revival of the teacher and learner within, with a fantastic dancer and choreographer, Francis Angol, and myself. We will be co-hosting this masterclass in revival dance. So there's an evening for this. It's so much, it's just too much. So because the show is a bit compact today, I won't go into the detail of each thing, but in the next cycle I'll be going through the full detail for all of the events. What I would say is that you must put in your diary the 29th of February, Saturday the 29th of February. this Saturday will be our Dark and Wild event, Black Sci-Fu. We bring a new term, Black Sci-Fu, Science Futures. So we're futurists. We are planning for the future, preparing for the future, seeing what's to come, making what's to come, and being that way. So anyway, we have this event, Dark and Wild. It's a regular program, a monthly cycle of social gathering. But this one, we'll be doing a launch for the festival. So we'll be launching the festival on the 29th of February. The festival starting in March. We'll also be launching our production team for the video, What's the Big Idea? Some shows in the forward and the cycle past, I did give you a little rendition of that. What's the big idea? Original, begin, start from the heart. My art, true indeed. I seed, I fruit. Mathematics. Yeah, we're rolling. You got something to say, Yasmin?
No.
You're a bit shy. Matrix institutes patterns. 1, 2, 3. You learn naturally. Classic. Anyway, there's this tune. You get a little sample there. We're making it into a fully professional produced tune, fresh beats, a fantastic video that we have. Something is so exciting. Global. It's a global project. We'll be launching that on the 29th of February. So you're going to get a flavour for this thing. And yeah, there's a lot to talk about. Plus, just on the sideline, I will be doing my first ever puppet show. Yeah, I'm preparing a puppet show. And it's my first puppet show. So, a bit and the point of origin. What have you got to say, Yasmin?
Murray made a puppet, and we were interested in making things a lot. And I brought some little toy puppets.
Oh,
and
yes.
I think he got interested in it.
Oh, well, I like your finger puppets. I do like them. I had an interest a bit before that. But this thing the puppet show that I'm going to do, it's called A Bit and the Point of Origin. It's about number, the origin of number. It's going to be fun. It's going to be really fun. Puppetry, hand controlling the puppet, suspension of belief, character expressed through the character of the puppet. The puppet is a bit. A bit is the praying mantis, and a mantis will be exploring the world of number in a very, very fun way. I will say that Yasmin actually took a very strong role in our first draft of this. She saw it come to life. We made it, you won't believe it, but we made it out of a blue plastic bag and two yellow washing up glove. I know it sounds funny. The puppet show is not going to be like that, because now we got some special theatrical people involved in the production of the puppets. So the puppet's coming along in a fantastic way. But the original prototype, yeah, it is a plastic bag and yellow glove. And Yasmin was there. We did it together, and it was fun. Too much fun. So I have to release it into the world. First puppet show at the Dark and Wild event on the 29th of February. It's not to be missed. It's not to be missed. So anyway, like I said, I know what I just said is, if you're really listening, you must admit it's unbelievable the amount of things that are going to be happening over these next few weeks. And it's all great. It's all great. I am going to play just a little piece of music. Then we're going to roll into a brief reasoning on something that we did today with Yasmin and the other members of our class. We explored it. Yasmin is here, so she can speak to that. And then we're going to go into the main feature, which is on historically black colleges and universities and how they exist, questions that come up in a conversation about their existence. We'll be hearing from a leader, the president for Howard University, which is the premier historically black college, university rather, in the US. And that one has a lot of experience. Their it's a huge institution. And so to hear from one who's managing that, leading that, and the subtleties behind it is very important. Black Open University, we must study these things. We're building for even a better future than that. A better future than that which is now. Yeah. As I say, let your light shine.
Welcome to the Black Open University Show. Rebuilding education from an African place of Black Open University Show. Rebuilding education from an African place of being.
uLearn Naturally Radio. Yes. uLearn Naturally Radio. uLearn Naturally Radio.
Welcome to the Black Open University Show. Rebuilding education from an African place of being.
uLearn Naturally Radio. Yes. uLearn Naturally Radio. uLearn Naturally Radio.
Welcome to the Black Open University Show. Rebuilding education from an African place of being.
uLearn Naturally Radio. Yes. uLearn Naturally Radio. uLearn Naturally Radio.
Welcome to the Black Open University Show. Rebuilding education from an African place of being.
uLearn Naturally Radio. Yes. uLearn Naturally Radio. uLearn Naturally Radio.
Fearless when you walk, honest when you talk, forces can't shake. Your swagger precedes you, so step into your light, remember who you are, that goal of the sun.
Welcome to the Black Open University Show. We're building education from an African place of being.
uLearn Naturally Radio. Yes. uLearn Naturally
Time has come for you to take your place. So stand tall and be firm. Let your voice be heard. Babylon's got to fall now. Your ancestors demand it. Release
Welcome
the
to the
ball
Black
and
Open
chain.
University Show.
Cause no matter what they do, despite what they
Rebuilding
say,
education
black gold
from an
always shine,
African
shine,
place.
shine. Orekelewa. Shine, black gold always shine. Black gold got to shine. Let it shine.
uLearn Naturally Radio. Yes.
Let it shine.
uLearn Naturally Radio.
Black gold shine. Black gold shine. Black gold always shine, shine, shine.
Welcome to the Black Open University Show. We're building education from an African place of being.
Do you know, perseverance is the mother of all creation? Yes, we are black gold. Black gold.
Black gold of the sun, shine your magic, let it shine. Black gold of the sun, shine your magic, let it shine. Black gold of the sun, shine your magic, let it shine.
uLearn Naturally Radio. Yes.
Shine your magic, let it shine.
uLearn Naturally Radio.
Shine your magic, let it shine. Black gold of the sun, shine your magic, let it shine. Black gold of the sun, shine your magic, let it shine. Black gold of the sun, shine your magic, let it shine. Black gold of the sun, shine your magic, let it shine.
Welcome to the Black Open University Show. Building education from an African place of
Let it shine.
uLearn Naturally Radio. Yes. uLearn Naturally Radio. uLearn Naturally Radio.
Black diamond, black gold, black lives matter. We all matter now.
Welcome to the Black Open University Show.
Let it shine.
We're building education from an African place of being.
Mother, let your black light shine.
uLearn Naturally Radio. Yes. uLearn Naturally Radio. uLearn Naturally Radio.
Welcome to the Black Open University Show. Building education from an African place of being.
uLearn Naturally Radio. Yes. uLearn Naturally Radio. uLearn Naturally Radio.
Welcome to the Black Open University Show. Rebuilding education from an African place of being.
Yes, welcome. We're coming into the midsection of the show. Black Open University radio show here on Bless Radio. We're in a special feature today. I have a special guest, the wonderful Yasmin Yaya. So we've been talking about making some mantis memory matrix structures. This is geometry structures, cubes out of sticks. But in actual fact, the thing we've been talking about, I know I haven't explained it fully on this show, I've explained it previously. The mantis memory matrix is a memorization tool. It's made of 27 points in a cube, and we use it to explore some math ideas, but also for mind mapping and visualization. So, when we play with it, it's one, it's lots of fun, but two, it's laying down a really powerful foundation for advanced thinking. So, anyway, in this class today, I want to talk a bit more about what we did today in our Level Being 9 class. The Level Being 9 class, we've been working on isosceles triangles. This is a simple structure in mathematics, but it's important how you introduce these things. So I want to just touch on some things that we covered today, not so much to do with just informing you about isosceles triangles, because I'm sure you all know all about them, but more about the holistic way to explore these things and the detail and things that you can connect into the learning of this. So in summary, an isosceles triangle is a triangle being a shape, 3 lines connected at 3 points, making and enclosing 3 angles. But an isosceles triangle is one that has 2 sides that are equal, and also 2 of the 3 internal angles that are equal. This is an isosceles triangle. If you see it, you'd know it. It's a useful structure. When you know this, the rule of it, if it's an isosceles, then you can know other things about it and calculate. Based on what you know, you can calculate what you don't know. That's the basic idea. So we had a conversation about this today, didn't we, Yasmin?
Yes.
You have to speak into the mic, though.
Yes.
Oh, yes, we did. So tell us a bit about this. What do you have to say? Would you like to read from your notes?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, are you gonna what are you going to read? Introduce what you're doing first of all. Before you start reading anything, what are you going to read?
About the about about the first sentence. Introducing what it means.
Okay, go for it.
The word isosceles that Euclid used to describe triangles with two but not three equal sides. It was taking I'm just gonna pause it here. There's in my notes there is some different type of writing.
A different script.
Yes. Writing called Arabic.
No, not Arabic. This is what Yasmin has is some Greek Latin writing. We drew this from a book called Origin of Mathematical Words, and it goes into a deeper analysis of mathematical words. So it, as well as using the normal English to explain the word, it goes into the script of the origin of the word. So I had them write that down, although we don't read that just yet, but it's there to know the script in which it is said it was originally written in for this word. Continue, Yasmin.
It was taken over by transliteration into Latin by Boethius when he translated the beginning of Euclid's Elements around AD 500, and from thence it eventually entered English.
Right, thank you for that. Thank you for sharing that. So there's a few points about that are interesting. Euclid is a famous historical character, famed for the one's work in the domain of math and science, particularly in defining pivotal terms in mathematics. The Elements is a famous book that he wrote, and to the word isosceles, what is being said there is that isosceles, the origin of it, is related to his use of that term in his work, and it was then transliterated into Latin around 500 AD by the common system of years. So the reason we came to that, and what I found interesting about this, is that we were talking about etymology, and in the process of doing this, we were introducing the cadets to the word etymology and the importance of this. So we had some cadets who were asked to do the etymology, find the etymology of this word isosceles, because when the word came up in the class the first time, it was found to be a curious word. Younger children were like, that's a funny word, sounds a bit funny. And I said, okay, well, check the etymology and check out what etymology is, then find the etymology of this word. And it was a little challenging for younger ones. So I wanted to unpack it, the importance of this. So the importance is that the etymology is different from the definition of the word. And so what we've been doing today is making a kind of template, which I'd like to share with you, just verbally, to explain the templates. The template is about what's required to come to practice level 2. That means that you're conscious and competent in the definition of a word. For a person, child, adult, to say they're competent with the use of a word at what we call practice level 2, which is a standard whereby the person is conscious and competent, we have this template. In the template, you would write the word as the key word. There's a space for writing that. Then it has 3 branches that come off that. It's like a mind map. The 3 branches, one branch goes to the word etymology, another branch goes to the word meaning or definition, and the third one goes to a branch which is about vision. So I'll start with the vision one first. It's simpler. So the vision means that you take the word and you draw something, or you make an icon or use an icon that helps you to see the meaning of the word. Rather than writing more words, you do an illustration to help you capture the idea of the word. Okay, so that's that one. The etymology, that section branches off into two places, two ways. One way in etymology is about the origin of the word. So we should find out the origin of the word. Sometimes that's rooted to a particular time, but in this situation it was rooted to Euclid, who is a historical character, and he is said to be the one that introduced the word. So he is the point of origin for that word, apparently. So that's origin. But also under etymology is the history of the word. So the history of the word, this is now going into the story, like how does the word change in use and how does it move from one form to another. So our book, which is the mathematical origins, I'll give you more detail actually, the mathematical origin of, rather, origins of mathematical words, a comprehensive dictionary of Latin, Greek and Arabic roots by Anthony Lobelio. So this is a fantastic book, Origins of Mathematical Words, a comprehensive dictionary of Latin, Greek and Arabic roots. And in this book, as you just heard my wonderful assistant say, she has explained that the history of the word, apart from being introduced by Euclid, was then transliterated by another person into Latin, and then from there found its way into the English language. This is the history of the word. So to say we've got consciousness and competence of a word, we should know the history and the origin of a word. That is the etymology. But also we should know the meaning of the word. So the meaning of isosceles is a triangle that has two sides that are equal, and therefore two angles out of the three that are equal. Okay, and this is the reasoning. I thought we'd bring something a bit more direct to the point. As we talk about level being 9, what does it mean? It means that we should get to grips with some fundamentals in a very deep way. And what I've just expressed is a good comprehension about this thing. It's a good approach to it. We're making templates. Not only did we study this thing Isosceles, we've got into some history, we've got into some language, which is important. And we've also generated a template which the cadets will be using going forward to improve the way that they hold words. There's one more special element in our template. So branching off from meaning is another kind of branch from that, which says use 3 times, 3 uses. The idea is that for any word, for you to say you've got practice level 2, that you're conscious and competent of the word, you should be able to use it in 3 different ways. 3 different sentences where you put the word in properly. When you can do this, then you have a sense of the meaning. You can say you know how to use the word, you know the meaning of the word. And yeah, that's a good test. That's a good practical test. 3. We say 3 because in the warrior arts, YehTehwagi, 3 is triangulation and enclosure. A triangle encloses a space. And so in this way, in a kind of metaphysical way, we're enclosing the area of the subject by knowing it in 3 different ways. It's a reasoning, Sababu, it's a reasoning. So yeah, that's what I'd share. That is a little insight into our level being 9, the way we do level being 9 work. Level being 9, level 9 is the highest, the most excellent standard in the GCSE. People think that it's particular people who are level 9, but actually level 9 is a way of being. And so the task is to enable our cadets, our children, to express their level being 9-ness. Yeah, it's very important. Anyway, we're rolling on. We've got things to do in this show. I've got a special feature. The feature is on historically black colleges and universities. I'm going to play it, And then I've got some commentary, brief commentary to make around it, critical commentary. So stay tuned for it. This segment is lengthy, so you sit, hold tight, but we're going to roll through.
Build deep and complete.
Do you know of the water of life?
What's the big idea? What's the big idea? Original again, start from the heart. Not too indeed. I see, I feel. Mathematics, matrix, institutes, patterns. 1, 2, 3, you learn naturally. Classic.
Welcome to the Black Open University Show. Rebuilding education from an African place of being. Welcome to the Black Open University Show. Building education from an African place of being.
Dr. Frederick has a servant leadership heart. He inspires others to be servant leaders too.
You could tell right away that this guy had it all. He was a real star from the get-go.
Dr. Frederick was always determined. He was always driven.
He's personable. Everyone likes him. He has great ideas. He's smart. He has all the qualities to be a great leader.
Dr. Frederick is so cool. And it's just one of those things you don't expect from a university president.
What's going to make him the best president is the fact that he loves Howard. And he would die trying to give all back to Howard University.
Yes. uLearn Naturally Radio. Yes. uLearn Naturally Radio. uLearn Naturally Radio. uLearn Naturally Radio.
Dr. Wayne Frederick, a native son of Trinidad, was diagnosed as a child with sickle cell anemia. He came to Howard University with a dream to become a physician. Today, a cancer surgeon who has achieved a meteoric rise as provost, interim president, and is now the 17th president of Howard University, to the surprise of none of those who have mentored and worked with him.
What an amazing story. And I always say, to God be the glory that he could take somebody like him who has sickle cell disease, not expected to live as a little kid, and then winds up being the president of Howard University. Who in the world could even imagine that? That's just beyond comprehension. He understands research. He understands academics. He understands how an education can really transform young people into being the next leaders. And he's got the energy, and his own story really brings that to direct relief. You can understand his own personal story and what Howard meant to him, and how he became a great surgeon, how he became a great leader, and now the president of a great university.
I saw him at homecoming. He's got a beautiful wife, beautiful family. And you don't expect for a university president, a dad, to be that cool. And he's just kind of got a real kind of cool swagger to him. And that's kind of exciting too. And I expect that that will get a lot more young people engaged as well.
We had a mutual friend, Shaka Hislop. And Shaka introduced me to Dr. Frederick. And maybe a week after that, I started calling him Doc, because everyone knew that he was smart. So anyway, he became the manager of the team. The team rallied around him, and I think he was probably one of the biggest reasons why the team went to the finals in 1988.
He has always been, and remains to this day, a fiercely loyal friend. That served me well through my years of playing sport professionally. I knew there was always someone I could go to for a kind ear, for a reassuring shoulder. For that, I'll forever be grateful. Those same qualities that make Dr. Frederick a fine friend will serve him to make an even better president. That I'm certain of.
My friend Wayne is going to be a superb president of this university. I think he's
going to be transformational, bring creativity, new ideas, innovation, energy. So I predict great things, and I think that's important not only for Howard, but also for our community, for our city. And I think he's going to be transformational for our nation and around the world. I mean, this guy is the real deal.
This real deal also gives back, not only to Howard, but to the community without being asked. For instance, when he volunteered help for the Unity Health Center or called a meeting for Bloomingdale neighborhood activists.
Everything that came up, he was well-versed on every single issue. And that to me was a shocker, because this wasn't a time where you just bring ideas and he immediately says, you know what, I'm going to take that back to my team. We'll come back to you in 2 weeks or so with an answer. He had not only studied the issues, but was prepared with an action plan.
Dr. Frederick, as we all know, is a person who cares so deeply for persons who do not have access to good quality health care. And so out of his compassion, he reached out to us. And what he did was make possible for specialists, physician specialists, to come out to our health centers in order to provide good care for people who often had difficulty accessing that kind of quality care. So we're just very grateful.
I got a call at, I think it must have been midnight, and it was Freddie calling me about a family friend of his who was in Trinidad who had a child that needed treatment. And he was there directing the care. He was supposed to be on a holiday in Hawaii, and here he was helping this child and this family get the care that they needed, first in Trinidad and then in the United States. You know, there's no smoke and mirrors about President Frederick. He is who he is. You know, that authenticity just shines through.
So, a bit of advice from those who love him and have been touched by him in so many ways, and a look into the future for the 17th president of Howard University.
Work hard and do everything that the Lord leads you to do, and all the things that are necessary will happen. That's my advice to him.
I would like for him to look at examples of other universities that you would deem to be really good at particular things, like Harvard and Yale are really good at bringing in funds.
I think any great leader, there's going to be days where it's lonely. And I think you need, at those moments, to reach out to your friends, to stay engaged, to really look to the core of why you're doing this.
I think the advice would be more for all of us that we don't put too much on him, that he can bear, and that we care for him and support him through this adventure, because he's taking out a challenge with real sense of mission.
Oh, well, you know, I think he should be the next Prime Minister of Trinidad, but, you know, I just think that he has that kind of quality and he's that special. And Trinidad would be lucky to have him as Prime Minister.
Congratulations, President Frederick, and good luck. I'm looking forward to the future of our beloved alum every bit as much as you are.
Yes. uLearn Naturally Radio. Yes. uLearn Naturally Radio. uLearn Naturally Radio. uLearn Naturally Radio.
Build deep and complete. Welcome to the Black Open University Show.
Let's Radio.
We're an essential part of the fabric for higher education simply because of the contribution that we make to diversifying many a field based on the data that you have. The National Science Foundation has a study that looked at the past decade, and the question was really who was producing African American STEM undergrads who go on to get STEM PhDs. Howard University was the #1 producer. The top 10 schools were HBCUs. That's right. and then when you, but if you look at how many Howard produced, we produced 220 in that period of time. Stanford, MIT, Harvard, and Yale produced 221. The endowment of those 4 schools, I think the market is doing a little better today based on some tweets. So the endowment of those schools is probably about 90 to 100 billion, and Howard's is 750 million. So out-punching your weight class, I think, is really the hallmark of our HBCUs. Right, in order for us to have better health outcomes, you want to have people who are culturally competent, taking care of the population, and you want disparities to close, because really that's where we spend our healthcare dollars. The fact that the maternal mortality rate for African American women is as high as it is, partially is because you don't have as many African American physicians taking care of them, or at least participating in the overall ecosystem of health that takes care of them and makes their issues a prominent source of concern. So I would say that differentiation is key.
So I just kind of want to talk a little bit about, so you look at Bennett College and they raised $8 million or however much in this course of 50 to 60 days. But over that same month of January, you had more than a dozen institutions that received $5 million donations on their own. So what, with kind of this interesting legacy and what HBCUs are still producing, what is kind of preventing that charitable giving aspect of?
Now, you think about it, in a country of 300 million, for one institution to do that, and that's the largest number for any one institution, that's a problem. What happens if Howard goes away, right? All of a sudden, we take a crisis and we turn it into extinction in terms of seeing some of those types of faces in certain fields. So I would argue that I think the federal government and state governments do have a responsibility to do that. And then when you put it in context of where that funding is now, let's look at that context. We have the largest endowment at Howard of all the HBCUs at $750 million, right? The institutions that we are competing with for students are in the Ivy League, right? And you've got Ivy League schools now with endowments between $20 billion and $40 billion. If they take 5% of their endowment and put it into the operating expense, which is kind of what most of our endowments do, they will be spinning off, in some circumstances, $2 billion. You spin off $2 billion, you run my institution on $750 million worth of revenue, operating revenue. You double my endowment with another $750 million, and the other 500 is gravy. You probably build 5 buildings, right? So that's just to put it in context for you in terms of what just spinning off 5% of their endowment in 1 year would do to Howard, and Howard is at this extreme in terms of the financial resources of all the HBCUs. So this is not even an income inequality gap. I think it's a danger to the national interest to not invest in these institutions.
Do you think HBCUs have a special role in countering displacement of local residents through gentrification, selling off property to developers to build condos?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. We've done quite a few real estate deals, and I want to make it clear that I have not sold any property because I feel very strongly about that. What we've done is we own all the land, and I have done long-term lease deals and allowed the developers to develop on the land. So we ultimately own, are still property owners. I think it's a challenge because either you get that revenue in from tuition, you get it from big donors, or you get it from other assets. And what we've tried to do is to use some of that to put it back into our institution. So for instance, our undergrad library is being renovated, and is being renovated because of dollars that have come in because of those real estate deals, in which I want to emphasize again, we still own the land.
Yeah.
right? If in 1978 you had more African American males enter medical school than in 2014, we have a problem. And if we don't address the problem all the way from K through 12, all the way to our undergrad and our medical school, then it's going to exist. We have a middle school on our campus focused on math and science. And I think if you stop any of those students right now and you ask them where they go to school, they'll tell you I go to Howard University. They won't say Howard University Middle School, but all of those things mean that they're beginning to assimilate with the thought of getting there. But we had to create that opportunity, right? And how many other people are doing it? We don't have all the resources to educate every black doctor in the country. So if others don't do it and give these kids an opportunity, then we're not going to get there. Three young black men were shot in D.C. They were brought to Howard Hospital and one of them died. And so, again, as a society, I think we have to prioritize what's important. And the loss of an African-American male should be memorialized by the pen of the Howard University president rather than a dog being walked on my campus. And I say that because it was a heartbreaking moment for me. I'm the father of a 14-year-old son, and to go home and think that the most important thing that anybody read about what I had to say on that Friday was about dog being walked on my campus and not about this young man who died in our streets and his two other friends who were in my hospital with gunshot wounds. And so I think as a society we have to prioritize and we have to make sure that that's what we're about. And as Howard's president and the father of a 14-year-old African-American male, that's way more important to me than
Tune into the context with CSI Peter.
On uLearn Naturally Radio.
Language and the use of words is extremely sensitive when it comes to the issue of racism.
Mm-hmm.
See, a lot of black people, they get emotional, but racism, as far as I understand, is like the core. It's like the sacred. It's the sacred. It's their juice. You can't mess around with their juice. You understand? We discuss it. You can't put emotional when you're dealing with that subject. It's too highly charged.
Tune into the context with CSI Peter. Tune into the context with CSI Peter.
On uLearn Naturally Radio. On uLearn Naturally Radio.
Tune into the context with CSI Peter.
Build deep and complete. Welcome to the Black Open University Show
on Bless Radio.
My name is Aisha and I'm the Media Services Editor at uLearn Naturally, here completing my work placement with Abundance Centres UK. At Cornell College I am studying media. Howard University is a historically black college which has received a 10 million gift for its STEM programme. I have done my research and here are my notes regarding this matter. Howard University received the largest donation in history to fund its efforts for diversity STEM fields. The 10 million gift from the Karsh Family Foundation will go toward the university's Karsh STEM Scholars programme, which provides scholarships covering all tuition and fees for about 30 students each year. Howard is the #1 producer of African American undergraduates who go on to pursue a PhD in science or engineering related field. One of the reasons Wayne A.I. Frederick, which is the Howard's president, thinks Howard University can attract more highly qualified African American STEM students than other prestigious research institutions is because its faculty is much more diverse and especially distinguishing feature in science, engineering and mathematics. Founded in 2017, the program is designed to increase the number of minority students earning a PhD or combined MD in a STEM discipline. In my next piece of research, I've got Howard University's largest donation ever raises questions about who gets donor coins. Black college graduates owe about twice as much as white college graduates 4 years after graduation, according to a 2016 study from the Brookings Institution. It was reported financial firms may be charging higher interest rates on loans for students at HBCUs, but HBCUs also succeed where other institutions do not. They make up just 3% of colleges and universities, but produce nearly 30% of African American students with bachelor's degrees in STEM fields. In my next research, I have comprehensive funding approaches for historically black colleges and universities. The president has every right to expect higher graduation rates and increased accountability from HBCUs, but he must also realise and acknowledge that HBCUs enrol more low-income and underprepared students who are typically part of the first generation in their family to attend college. Such students pose greater risks in terms of graduation and require more resources to succeed. Measures of institutional success need to take into account the individual characteristics of students attending HBCUs. Although funding to HBCUs has increased in the past 10 years, it remains only a small fraction of what the total awarded to all US colleges and universities. Moreover, the report noted that among HBCUs, funding was unevenly distributed and with the non-HBCUs concentrated at selected institutions. In my next piece of research, I have teachers' implicit bias against black students starts in preschool study finds. Studies stated that black students are nearly 4 times as likely to be suspended as white students and nearly twice as likely to be expelled. Black preschoolers are 3.6 times more likely to receive 1 or more temporary exclusions. While the teachers were asked to detect challenging behaviour, no behaviour existed in any of the videos. Yet when asked which children required the most attention, 42% of the teachers identified the black male. In my next piece of research, I have why do black students quit university more often than their white peers? A recent study found that 10.3% of black students quit university early in England, compared with 6.9% for the student population as a whole. In my next piece of research, I have what the right doesn't understand about colleges. HBCUs have produced 80% of the nation's black judges and 50% of its black doctors. Even President Donald Trump, whom very few black Americans view as an ally, understand that these schools deserve federal support. I'm here with Ayana. She's a local teacher. I wonder if she has any thoughts about this information.
Yeah. Would you be able to go up to the top one? The first one was in relation to the 10 million gift. And they used it for scholarships mainly. So that was for underprivileged getting the chance to go uni. Was that what they used it for?
It's designed to increase the number of minority students earning a PhD.
Okay.
In a STEM discipline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I noticed, I mean, it has vexed me a little bit, this the report, because obviously it just adds to what's I already know about what's happening to to the ethnic minority or whatever. But the 10 million that was given, you say it's highly disproportionate to what is usually given to universities who haven't got.
Yeah.
So that is another thing which is really bad, because then it obviously stops what happens after uni. So it's what happened after, what the jobs and that. It's just it doesn't give them the opportunities. And if you go down a bit as well in relation to the preschool, that preschool, would you be able to just read that preschool one again to me in relation to?
Yeah, so studies have found that black students are nearly 4 times as likely to be suspended as white students, and twice as likely to be expelled.
Okay. See, that's quite interesting, because that's in US, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
But I believe, I'm not 100% sure, but I believe that's the same or similar to the UK. That in the UK there's a massive disproportionate of black children who are excluded and suspended.
Yeah.
So which is now mirrored in the US. So that's again something which is and this information that you have got, where did you get this information from?
Mostly from online sources on the internet.
On the internet, okay, because it'd be interesting to go into it deeper. Okay. So what's right? So they gave £10 million gift.
Yeah.
And there's a disproportion. What's usually what the other unis get that are not historically black unis? Roughly?
Around 200 million.
200 million. So it's quite.
And typically for HBCUs is maximum probably 2 million.
2
so
million.
10 million was
a massive
big
difference.
Yeah.
And the HBCUs, what's that describing HBCUs? What's
historically black.
Oh, okay.
Colleges. Yeah.
Okay.
And universities.
What happened after that 10 million was given to that uni? What was the aftermath? What happened afterwards? And what difference did that make? Because it's not related to them actually doing the results, is it? It's related to them afterwards. But in fact, it is, because they're bringing in students who haven't got the money to do. They wouldn't have gone to uni if they hadn't got that money anyway, so they wouldn't have gone there at all. So it's both. It would be interesting anyway to just get more information on what happened afterwards, what happened to those students who would never have gone college, who got the scholarship, and also the link between England and US.
I think that was globally.
That one was
I just one on the website.
Okay,
yeah.
Which one? The one about the preschool?
Yeah, this one, yeah.
So that's throughout.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I was thinking that
the 10 million, it's all about the colleges is in the US, but everything else was...
It's Britain.
Yeah, everywhere.
Okay, so that's literally saying that from nursery, primary school, all the way up now to uni, it's just continuous oppression or unfairness happening. Yeah. It's a very interesting article, and I like the way you've put it together. Yeah, it's made me want to go and find out a bit more about it. So I'll be really interested in the websites that you use, that I can go and do more research.
Thank you, Ayana, for being here today.
Okay. Thank you for the information.
And thank you for listening.
Okay.
Build deep and complete.
Do you know of the water of life?
What's the big idea? What's the big idea? Original again, start from the heart. Not too indeed. I see, I find. Mathematics, matrix, institutes, patterns. 1, 2, 3, uLearn naturally. Classic.
Welcome to the Black Open University Show. Rebuilding education from an African place of being. Welcome to the Black Open University Show. Building education from an African place of being.
Dr. Frederick, I want to start in a place that, so most conversations about HBCUs start with the question, why do HBCUs still matter? But I want to start with statistics, and then we can move into a little bit of different question. So if you're looking at the numbers, around 80% of black judges, 50% of black lawyers and doctors, 25% of black STEM graduates come from historically black colleges. So my question is, why do people still question the relevance of HBCUs?
Yeah, because unfortunately, they probably don't know the data that you just pointed out. I think the issue is really how excellent can we be. We're an essential part of the fabric for higher education simply because of the contribution that we make to diversifying many a field based on the data that you have. And so you're right, I don't think the question is why they still exist. Clearly, the outcomes from the historically black colleges and universities, I think, speak for themselves. And so what we have to do is to make sure that they are as strong as possible so that they can fulfill and continue to fulfill that role as strongly as possible. And I'll give you two more data points to further that argument. The National Science Foundation has a study that looked at the past decade, and the question was really who was producing African American STEM undergrads who go on to get STEM PhDs. Howard University was the #1 producer. The top 10 schools were HBCUs. That's right. and then when you, but if you look at how many Howard produced, we produced 220 in that period of time. Stanford, MIT, Harvard, and Yale produced 221. The endowment of those 4 schools, I think the market is doing a little better today based on some tweets. So the endowment of those schools is probably about 90 to 100 billion, and Howard's is 750 million. So out-punching your weight class, I think, is really the hallmark of our HBCUs.
Yeah, and I want to get back to the kind of question of funding in just a moment, but so you were mentioning kind of it's really about being more excellent. So what does it look like for HBCUs to be more excellent?
So the first thing is HBCUs are not a monolithic group, and that's one of the things that I always try to make sure that everyone understands, that we're a very heterogeneous group. You have an institution like Howard that's fairly complicated, has professional schools like a medical school, a dental school. We have the only dental school in the District of Columbia, the only pharmacy school in the District of Columbia. And then you may have smaller colleges and universities that have about 500 students. So the first thing I would say is recognizing that they're not all one monolithic group. But what's necessary is for us to really find the areas where we can have the biggest impact and make sure that we do that extremely well. That does require some focused funding in particular areas, but as I mentioned to you before, I think we have to think also a bit out of the box. Miles College is a small school in Alabama, does Farsi as one of their strengths, right? You think of our intelligence agencies. I'm not sure how many employees of color we have, and I certainly don't know how many that we have who speak Farsi, but I'm pretty sure that number could probably be very useful to the intelligence community as an example. So you combine that with cybersecurity education, and I think you have a winner as an example. So finding niche areas where we can participate and probably differentiate, I think is going to be key. And then when you get to an institution like the one that I'm running at Howard University, and you look at the fact that in 1978 there were more African American males who applied to medical school than in 2014, and Howard University is the #1 producer of African Americans who go on to medical school, then the country has to invest in that, right? In order for us to have better health outcomes, you want to have people who are culturally competent, taking care of the population, and you want disparities to close, because really that's where we spend our healthcare dollars. The fact that the maternal mortality rate for African American women is as high as it is, partially is because you don't have as many African American physicians taking care of them, or at least participating in the overall ecosystem of health that takes care of them and makes their issues a prominent source of concern. So I would say that differentiation is key.
One of the things that differentiation kind of requires is the funding to do it. So I just kind of want to talk a little bit about. So you look at Bennett College, and they raised $8 million or however much in this course of 50 to 60 days. But over that same month of January, you had more than a dozen institutions that received $5 million donations on their own. So what, with kind of this interesting legacy and what HBCUs are still producing, what is kind of preventing that charitable giving aspect of?
Yeah, I think some of it is historical, I would say. And by that, I would say culturally, if you look at the ecosystem around HBCUs, I would say that our grads give back in other ways, not necessarily financially, but they tend to go back to lower income parts of the United States or their home countries, and they tend to give back in spades and service. Again, there's data that you can cite. If you look at the graduates from Morehouse School of Medicine, Meharry Medical School, and Howard's Medical School, they're more likely to serve in underserved areas. So they do give back in that sense. It also means that their income levels are going to be less as a result. Clearly, there's still significant income inequality and discrimination in terms of what African-American women may get paid for the same job that a white male may get paid for. And so we still have significant income inequalities. And when you look at the unemployment rate, it's still almost twice that for African-Americans than it is for the rest of the population. So all of those things mean that the actual amount of dollars that they can give back themselves is a bit suppressed. And then when you look at mega donors who give, we still have a culture in this country of, we say that it's giving to people who want to be associated with success, but really what we're doing is really making the bigger that much bigger without really getting a return on investment in terms of what the broader construct. So we have to make an argument, we as in the HBCUs, I think have to make an argument to the broader society as to why we are important, and to allow people to see that the fact that they may not have attended an HBCU, or that they may not be somebody who's African American or come from a circumstance in which they have not had all the opportunities, why it's important for these institutions to be strong and to thrive, because ultimately they will benefit. And I think that that's where we have to make the argument. So whether it's corporate donations or foundation donations or just uber wealthy donors, we have to be in that sphere. We have to participate, and I think that that's more and more you're seeing that the HBCU presidents and boards are recognizing that and are either adding those types of individuals to their boards or engaging more with corporations. I just hired someone a few months ago to be a senior VP for corporate relations, as an example. It's not a position we've ever had at the university, and that's an example of the types of things that we have to do, and hopefully there'll be a return on investment on that type of investment soon enough.
Yeah. So Senator Elizabeth Warren has proposed a $50 billion kind of fund for HBCUs and other MSIs. Do you think that it's, you talked a bit about historical, that kind of historical underfunding of the institutions and that legacy. Do you think it's a federal and state kind of responsibility to kind of address that historical underfunding?
I have to admit, I'm not usually of the proclivity to suggest that, you need the federal and state support, especially for private institutions. In this circumstance, though, I do think it is a responsibility, because the diversity of what the 102 HBCUs is providing, I think, is so strong that the federal government and the state governments have an interest in seeing them thrive. I mean, the issue around black docs is an example. You look at dentists. 40% of the black dentists in this country are produced by 2 schools in this country, Howard and Meharry. So as far as I'm concerned, I think the federal government does and should take an interest in making sure that those schools thrive, so that we can certainly boost that. The other reason is because there's you have an outsized burden that you're putting on these institutions. I'm a surgeon. I trained at Howard. Howard has probably produced more African-American women surgeons than any other institution in this country. And over the course of Since 1970, we've probably produced about 50-something to 60 of those young women. Now, you think about it, in a country of 300 million, for one institution to do that, and that's the largest number for any one institution, that's a problem. What happens if Howard goes away, right? All of a sudden, we take a crisis and we turn it into extinction in terms of seeing some of those types of faces in certain fields. So I would argue that I think the federal government and state governments do have a responsibility to do that. And then when you put it in context of where that funding is now, let's look at that context. We have the largest endowment at Howard of all the HBCUs at $750 million, right? The institutions that we are competing with for students are in the Ivy League, right? And you've got Ivy League schools now with endowments between $20 billion and $40 billion. If they take 5% of their endowment and put it into the operating expense, which is kind of what most of our endowments do, they will be spinning off, in some circumstances, $2 billion. You spin off $2 billion, you run my institution on $750 million worth of revenue, operating revenue. You double my endowment with another $750 million, and the other 500 is gravy. You probably build 5 buildings, right? So that's just to put it in context for you in terms of what just spinning off 5% of their endowment in 1 year would do to Howard, and Howard is at this extreme in terms of the financial resources of all the HBCUs. So this is not even an income inequality gap. I think it's a danger to the national interest to not invest in these institutions.
So I wanted to switch gears a little bit and talk about kind of this town-gown relationship. Howard's in an interesting position, whereas DC sort of gentrifies, you still have this kind of historic kind of legacy institution there. How do you manage that relationship as the area around Howard gentrifies?
Yeah, so I have a confession. I mean, I came here as a 16-year-old to DC, lived in Northeast, took the bus to Howard with DC residents who were going to the high schools across the street from Howard, such as Banneker. So I really feel like I'm a DC native with a southern drawl, very southern drawl. And so I think it's very important for us to preserve, not just preserve the legacy for the sake of preserving it, but I think if you meet someone from DC who grew up here as third generation, et cetera, there's something so soulful about that person, so unique, that adds so much character and energy to the city, that I think to lose that carelessly, especially, is just unforgivable. So I feel very strongly that we have to look at how these things work, how they interlock, and to make sure that we do this in a balanced fashion so that we get the type of environments that we want. So I think there are a couple of things that I try to do. When I became president, I had a meeting with the ANC commissioners and the faculty, students, and staff for Howard in the boardroom of the university, and I did that every month. And the reason for doing that was to make sure that everyone was educated about why this at that time we were almost 150 years old, why this institution was there in the first place. Because I think sometimes in our society, we just assume that people are going to move into the city, move into this neighborhood, see this university there, and just assume great things. And unfortunately, that's not the society we live in, because most of those people will move, take the train, and never even walk on that campus or pick up the news and really look and figure out that this place has produced more black physicians than any other place in the country, and all of those other types of things. So I think you have to really have interaction. I think that's one. The second thing is I think we need to look at some of this gentrification differently. I've recently been in a discussion with the city about potentially moving Howard's Hospital to St. E's campus and building out our health sciences complex with the 4 health sciences schools, nursing and allied health, pharmacy, medicine, and dentistry around there. I think that's a different kind of gentrification. You put 1,100 to 1,200 young African Americans in that place, well educated, who could interact. You could create jobs for the people in that neighborhood. You have 170,000 citizens. You have no acute care hospital where a woman can deliver a baby. You have 2 grocery stores. I think we could create a different type of gentrification. We talk about gentrification, but the subplot there is a racial issue. And we unfortunately leave that elephant in the room and talk around it by putting the words gentrification around that elephant. And in truth and in fact, I think what we need to look at is how do we empower people in that neighborhood so that they can raise their income levels and raise their quality of life, etc. Oftentimes, what we're doing is we drop the elephant in and displace everything out, and I think that there's a different way to approach it, and so that's one of my hopes, that we could approach it differently.
Yeah. So we're going to go to a couple of questions from the audience. The first question, as the #1 HBCU in the country, I went to Alabama A&M University in Huntsville. So it's a pretty good one as well. So I wonder if your plan for the future includes expanding financial aid to cover the cost of more Pell-eligible FGLI students.
So I think this is a very interesting perspective. So we're a private institution. 60% of my undergrad students are Pell Grant eligible, right? So to put that in context, the average student who's coming to Howard, their parents make less than $40-something thousand. And of those Pell Grant eligible students, 50% have an EFC, an expected family contribution of 0. So this is a major issue for us, and our discount rate right now is about 45%. So we charge about $27,000 in tuition, and we're discounting about 45% off the bat. Last year we gave $110 million in institutional aid. So what we do in terms of already giving to students to afford them the opportunity to come is huge. Ultimately, I would like for Howard to fully fund all Pell Grant students completely, because we've demonstrated that we can get those students through and graduated just as well as we do the students who don't qualify for Pell Grants. As a matter of fact, the difference in my Pell Grant graduation rate and my non-Pell graduation rate is 1%. And so we're very proud of that, but we can do even more with the right types of resources. And you have to remember, we're taking those students from the bottom 20% in income level, and we often are shooting them up into the top 10%. Income being a marker of their ability to navigate and get up the economic escalator. And so definitely I would love to fund it, but again, we need those types of donations that would underwrite that discount rate that I was referring to.
Yeah. Do you think HBCUs have a special role in countering displacement of local residents through gentrification, selling off property to developers to build condos?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. We've done quite a few real estate deals, and I want to make it clear that I have not sold any property, because I feel very strongly about that. What we've done is we own all the land, and I have done long-term lease deals and allowed the developers to develop on the land. So we ultimately are still property owners. I think it's a challenge, because either you get that revenue in from tuition, you get it from big donors, or you get it from other assets. And what we've tried to do is to use some of that to put it back into our institution. So for instance, our undergrad library is being renovated, and is being renovated because of dollars that have come in because of those real estate deals, in which I want to emphasize again, we still own the land.
Yeah. I actually have a subsequent question that's following up on something you said a little bit earlier about black doctors and physicians. Texas Tech recently stopped considering race in admissions due to an agreement with the Justice Department. Do you think what do you think the role that affirmative action should play in medical school should be?
Yeah, I not only went to Howard and did general surgery residency at Howard, but I did my fellowship at MD Anderson. And when I was there at MD Anderson, I was the only black person in the surgery department of about 40-something people. I went back last week as the distinguished alum for 2019. And I mention that because if we don't look at providing those opportunities through some mechanism, whether it's affirmative action or us actually creating pipeline opportunities, there will be a dearth of opportunity and a dearth of outcomes that have a diverse society representation in all of these different fields. And I think that that's more dangerous than the concerns that people may have over affirmative action. And the numbers just don't suggest that, right? If in 1978 you had more African American males enter medical school than in 2014, we have a problem. And if we don't address the problem all the way from K through 12, all the way to our undergrad and our medical school, then it's going to exist. We have a middle school on our campus focused on math and science. And I think if you stop any of those students right now and you ask them where they go to school, they'll tell you I go to Howard University. They won't say Howard University Middle School, but all of those things mean that they're beginning to assimilate with the thought of getting there. But we had to create that opportunity, right? And how many other people are doing it? We don't have all the resources to educate every black doctor in the country. So if others don't do it and give these kids an opportunity, then we're not going to get there.
Going to take one more question from the audience quickly. How do you feel about people from the communities coming to walk their pets on the campus?
I thought we had gotten past this question. In all seriousness, I'll say this. On the same day that I put out a statement about this, which was a Friday, I think probably Good Friday to be exact, 3 young black men were shot in D.C. They were brought to Howard Hospital and one of them died. And so, again, as a society, I think we have to prioritize what's important. And the loss of an African-American male should be memorialized by the pen of the Howard University president rather than a dog being walked on my campus. And I say that because it was a heartbreaking moment for me. I'm the father of a 14-year-old son, and to go home and think that the most important thing that anybody read about what I had to say on that Friday was about dog being walked on my campus and not about this young man who died in our streets and his two other friends who were in my hospital with gunshot wounds. And so I think as a society we have to prioritize and we have to make sure that that's what we're about. And as Howard's president and the father of a 14-year-old African-American male, that's way more important to me than
Tune into the context with CSI Peter.
On uLearn Naturally Radio.
Language and the use of words is extremely sensitive when it comes to the issue of racism.
Mm-hmm.
See, a lot of black people, they get emotional, but racism, as far as I understand, is like the core. It's like the sacred. It's the sacred. It's their juice. You can't mess around with their juice. Do you understand? We discuss it. You can't put emotional when you're dealing with that subject. It's too highly charged.
Tune into the context with CSI Peter. Tune into the context with CSI Peter.
On uLearn Naturally Radio. On uLearn Naturally Radio.
Tune into the context with CSI Peter.
Build deep and complete.
Do you know of the water of life?
What's the big idea? What's the big idea? Original again, start from the heart. Not too in deep. I see, I feel. Mathematics, matrix, institutes, patterns. 1, 2, 3, you learn naturally. Classic.
Welcome to the Black Open University Show. Rebuilding education from an African place of being. Welcome to the Black Open University Show. Building education from an African place of being.
Yes, Ashima family, that was a lengthy feature, a very, very special feature. As you can see, we've gone into a lot of coverage of this area. We're here. It is Astamari, Ras Astamari Bartekun. I am the principal for the Black Open University, and this is the Black Open University show here on Bless Radio. I'm going to speak through a few points regarding this. Regarding our coverage of this special subject. So we heard from the one Wayne Frederick. He is the principal for Howard University. And obviously being the leader for essentially the leading historically black university, his insights are very important. So I'd like to drill down into some of the things he said. In the clip that you heard, you also heard from one of our staff, Aisha, a new work placement dealing with media editing for uLearn Naturally Learner Cooperative, and the one Ayana, a local teacher. So yeah, there's a lot that we've covered. I wanted to pick on a few things, like, for example, things like diversifying the field. He mentioned so many interesting points. Diversifying the field. Let me run through some of them and I'll unpack them as in review. Diversifying the field. What does that really mean? To outpunch the weight class. To differentiate as a key. Differentiating the service. I'm just going to throw out these terms. These are terms he used. I want to unpack them. I think they're important in terms of building institutions of higher learning from an African place of being. Charitable giving. The presenter asked Dr. Wayne about charitable giving and what prevents it. That charitable giving is in the context of what prevents students who have passed through the institution from giving forward, or giving round in a new cycle once they've graduated to newcomers, to the next generation. What prevents it? Dr. Wayne, he spoke about extinction events, the possibility that if Howard were to fail, not that it will, because it's well established, but if it were not funded properly and it did fail, that certain sectors of black intelligence would collapse and there would be an extinction of expertise in certain domains. That's interesting. Danger to national, what did he say? The national interest. A danger to the national interest. He sees some things, underfunding to the historically black colleges and universities, as a danger to the national interest. I am more skeptical about what the national interest is from a broadly American perspective. What is really meant by that? Yeah. International interest. Interest Pan-Africa. I am interested in all of these things. He mentioned that there were children in the university and that these children, they're in a middle school, but if you ask them, they would simply say they go to Howard University. I thought this was really special. This, for me, it's like our Black Open University, where we have young cadets doing level 9 work in the Black Open University. Okay. Bear with me a second. Enjoy the music, the sound. I have a matter. I shall return. Yep. Well, thank you for that. Thank you for your patience. We had a little thing to deal with. But let me flow on. We were talking about the children in the Howard University Middle School and how they they would call themselves, they would say, I go to Howard University. And for me, this is very special because it's very much like our modeling for the Black Open University, to use the language of Black Open University and have primary school children and secondary school children in a class, in a schooling, in that institution, which does definitely deal with higher learning, is special. It sets the mind in the right way, because a university shouldn't be limited by age. And in the tradition of universities, there's always been a space for younger people to be in it, doing whatever their capacity allows them to do. So it's about excellence. There is some also news in the context of investment and funding. Trump, I hear, is looking to, in quotes, put more investment into HBCUs. I am very skeptical about the conduct of that one there, Mr. President Trump, leader of the free world. Yeah. So, yeah, a man like this who demonstrates no sort of integrity in the reasoning, who demonstrates globally, publicly, insecurities of a childish nature. Yeah, I know he's got some power to do certain things. He can execute certain things of force, but still, the idea that this character has goodwill for historically black colleges, I don't think so. So that thing should be investigated very carefully. In my opinion, he and his club of people, his sector, the ones that he represents in the utmost, they would want to undermine historically black colleges, perhaps to invest in them so that they become dependent on the federal government for America, so that in the future they can just cut the funding and smash it to pieces. I did tell you I'm skeptical about that. So that's my thoughts on that. We need to think about black investment. Where would that come from? I'm curious about what does Howard University's relationship to international investment or investment pan-Africa, what does that look like? These things seem like challenging positions. Very recently I've been speaking with colleagues in different parts of the world who either are setting up or have already set up educational institutions, small schoolings, operations like this, mainly in Africa. And the question is about how to fund that, how to fund those institutions, because typically the governments, the people setting it up that I'm talking to, they're people who have travelled from, they're Africans who have travelled from the West, who have attracted some resources, having lived in the West. You say West, but to me, you get what I mean. Europe, the USA, this kind of thing. And then travelled back to the continent to set up educational institutions and are looking for ways to fund that. And the aspiration is often to turn to the States, to say, let's go to the States because there's rich black people there and we can get money from them. But listen carefully to the one, Dr. Wayne. He is the president for Howard University, and he's explaining the context in which they are challenged by funding and undermined in a certain way by the government's funding and even their own ability to generate huge endowments. What the reason this whole article came about, the reason why we have picked it up, is because they recently received a 10 million endowment for developing students in STEM. And that is the largest endowment that they've received. that endowment is spread over several institutions that come under historically black colleges and universities. It sits in comparison with endowments for other universities which are not historically black, endowments that run more at the high end to tens of millions to hundreds of millions, 200 million, $100 million in endowments for some universities that, listen, so for 10 million to be the largest ever for a historically black university is an indictment in some way on the context in which our institutions that have grown to serve Africans, the context that they exist in the States and globally, because these institutions are, they in the world Pan-Africa, they are significant educational entities, even though every African country will have university structures. These ones sit in a certain powerful space in relation to these things. He mentioned a term which I like a lot, culturally competent. He spoke about developing culturally competent professionals in the medical field, and how important it is, for example, to have African American women with certain medical conditions being treated by culturally competent African American physicians, because there's a distinction, and that culturally competence is a thing of value. He's right. I highly agree with this. I think it's understated, and this is a cornerstone for Black Open University, the development of cultural competence. The term culture means patterns of growth and ways of being. So if you say African culture, then you're talking about African patterns of growth and African ways of being. And to have competence in it is to do a thing properly. Competence is to do a thing properly. So that term is a very, very potent term, a potent aspiration for all educational providers that would seek to serve the African community. Obviously from an African place of being. I should say, by the way, just in case anyone is confused, developing a service from an African place of being, in my position, doesn't mean that people of other cultures can't access the service. It doesn't mean that. That may be, that may be interesting to some people, but it's definitely a clear position of where the thing comes from and its principle and how it intends to progress itself in terms of the system of teaching. That it comes from an African place of being is a fundamental rooting and guide to the future. And with that steady, there should be no reason why the services are not provided or cannot be provided to all persons interested in a global context. I'm not one for the retreat position and trying to hide away from the world. No. So that institution, Howard University, over 150 years old, he mentioned some interesting points about the need to develop interaction with the local society. He spoke about people coming near to the campus, but being able to pass through the area without realizing how special it is. And I can really feel that from our modest position. as the Black Open University to have interaction. This is the whole principle of a learner cooperative. So interaction allows full appreciation of what is happening in the educational space and to value it properly. It is the higher way that we can succeed in delivering the kind of learning that we all desire, that we need. We spoke about raising income. Raising income is an interesting point. Obviously, raising income for Dr. Wayne, president for Howard University, is about raising dollars, raising US dollars within the context of the US system of economics. I see that the future of education from an African place of being needs to stand outside of any current systems of economics. There needs to be a different system of economics that serves the African interest. Because these systems that are currently there, they are built, they have been built to specifically not serve anyone's interest other than the host. Well, I say host, I mean, well, it's in a way, I mean, to put it bluntly, the way that capitalism has developed is a parasitic form. It's developed as a parasitic form to abuse populations, to remove resources, to enslave, to confuse. It sounds a bit like an illness. So yeah, but I'm open to reasoning. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. If you have a point, if you have something to say, you should check us out in our WhatsApp forum and put your words forward, or just contact and share the reasoning. But to try and model, essentially what I'm saying is to try and model a higher institution of learning from an African place of being, using the context of basic capitalism, is fundamentally problematic. To study currency is to study economics is to study currency, and currency is something manipulated to flow in certain ways so that certain people can accrue wealth, health, freedom, and general ease. Now, if that thing is not tackled so that there's equality, then it's not proper. But the persons who have set it that way, and the institutions that keep it that way, they're not for turning on a whim or on an appeal. They're not going to turn based on an appeal to turn because it's morally wrong. Those kind of structures transcend ethics. So it's challenging. I would say that this thing is not really about raising income in the sense of dollars and pounds and yen, or birr, or any other currencies that we have. It's about raising wealth and redefining what wealth is. Health is part of wealth, and it's about raising wealth. Wealth is bound into the land. Wealth is bound into sovereignty. Wealth is bound into cultural competence. cultural clarity. So yeah, he touched on these things, and I'm touching on them now. I'm unpacking them a certain way, but obviously I have to keep this thing tight because the show is flowing into some deep time zone, and yeah. There's more though. He mentioned this thing called EFC, Effective Family Contribution. It's interesting to me that the university monitors that, and it's rightly so, to monitor the effective family contribution. And he said that a large proportion of ones attending may have an effective family contribution of 0. Too much would have that position for various reasons, but it's a thing. He spoke about pipeline opportunities, and that was in comparison to what do you call it now? When you have the word that's coming to mind is wrong. It's wrong. It's tokenism. When you say quotas, you're going to put a few people up. You must put in a certain number of people to balance the books. So you must have a certain number of blacks in to balance the books, or a certain number of women in to balance the books, or a certain number of black women in to balance the books, or whatever, black men, like this. Yeah, that quota thing is wrong as well. It's wrong mainly because it doesn't tackle the root reason why the imbalance took place. It tries to patch over something without tackling the root dynamic behind why the imbalance took place. So I'm interested in this pipeline opportunities. He didn't define it well, but I would shape it myself and look at it in a certain way of securing the connection between the educational institution and the place of work for the graduate. Securing that connectedness so that certain institutions who need the best get the best from your educational institution, like the Black Open University, and they know it's the best, and the world knows it's the best, and that's good. Pipeline, straight, oil pipeline. They pipe the oil from one place to another. We need to pipe the intelligence from institutions from an African place of being, valuing culture and self-development, community development, into more institutions that value the same thing, so that the whole structure can develop properly. It's necessary, and I hope no one feels displaced by that. It's a matter of health, a matter of not being continuously abused globally by various economic and political systems, which obviously is coming to an end. The context. At the end, the last thing that Dr. Wayne says is, it cuts at what he values. And he's making an emotional point about how his words were distorted. He made some statements, and people picked up on one thing to do with dog on the campus, instead of picking up the issue of life and death of young people that came to the campus also in a different way. But that thing is a dynamic that they're always faced with, and you can't ignore it lightly, because even it came up in the show. It was the question that the presenter made was to talk about the if you like, the banter side of the reasoning instead of the serious point, which the good doctor had to bring back on to the table. Yeah, so we touched through many things. We've touched through many things. Diversifying the field, I wanted to unpack this a little bit more. Diversifying the field is like, well, I'm reinterpreting what he said, but he spoke on an interesting thing. He touched on the possibility that Howard University could be supplying the US intelligence service with special operatives in Farsi, learning to speak the language of the Republic of Iran. Interesting. And the region, very interesting. That's diversification. It's interesting. I'm not sure that's really in Pan-Africa. I'm not sure how useful that is. If anything, people should learn Farsi and those other languages of that region to enhance collaboration. I would have thought that would be more sensible, because those beloved ones are in some regard at the front of certain issues that are bound to come to Africans. For example, the sovereignty of nuclear power, the freedom of a nation to develop fusion technologies and technologies of atomic quality and dynamic. It cannot be that some nations can dictate to other nations that they cannot develop in their knowledge of these fundamental things. And if they're doing it to Iran, then obviously the intention is to do it to everybody, which means that Africa is not supposed to have these things unless it's managed by someone else, and that's not right. So, with due respect, if we're to learn Farsi in our educational institutions, it should be to develop brotherhood with the many brothers and sisters of the nations of the world. And we should not just learn Farsi, we should learn all the languages, become experts in all of them through our higher educational institutions, with the specific purpose of forming collaborations and brotherhoods and sisterhoods of kinship, of nationhood. Sovereign nationhoods working together, of course. It's got to be this. Yeah. I mean, he got a round of applause when he talked about punching out of the weight class, meaning that for Howard University's budget, they're doing tremendous things compared to what others are doing. But this is our way. African communities, people are excelling in so many fantastic ways, which is underrepresented in any mass media and made to look insignificant compared to what it is. So that principle that he's expressing is not new, but there's something to question as to why we are in that position and how to get out of that position, so that we're not punching out of our weight class, that we're in all appropriate weight classes, that we have institutions in every domain, meaning that Howard University or other universities of the future should be receiving equal kinds of endowments if they are doing the work. If they are succeeding as Howard is, they should be receiving as leaders. Anyway, underlying this is the big issue, the context of racism and the dynamics of this, how this works on the planet. Let's not beat around the bush. So we're coming to a kind of conclusion for this. We have touched onto many things, and probably I could go deeper. I feel like there's so much more that I could go into with this. But essentially, the reason why I valued this conversation is because Dr. Wayne Frederick is the president of the leading historically black university in a grouping of institutions called historically black colleges and universities. And he, as you just heard, has spoken about many issues. And the African American community, and therefore by default to all communities Pan-Africa. There's something to read into it and to read through it into certain answers. And these are the things, these answers are the things that the Black Open University aspire to. We aspire to bringing these answers forward in a perfect form. What I found interesting in all of that conversation also was that he didn't and couldn't speak, I feel, he couldn't and didn't speak to an African pedagogy, to a system of learning. He touched near to it when he drew on to cultural competence. But I think that he would not drill down into that, because if he did, he would lose funding from someone. And that's a problem, because the cultural competence is the key. The African pedagogy is the key. So this is the key to generating black excellence. And just to recap, because I know some people get excited when you say things like this, black excellence. Black excellence is not taking away from anyone else's excellence. Let me repeat that. Black excellence is not taking away from anyone else's excellence. It may expose some people's insecurities. That's a different thing. But you know, we can't promote a world where people live under insecurities. This is not the way. This is not the aspiration of any sovereign nation or being. We try to remove insecurity and build peace and stability. And that is the way. Okay, I'm going to bring myself to the conclusion of this. There's a lot I'd like to just keep going on it, but I'm going to wrap it up now and say that we've gone in there on a good level. I give thanks to all the team that was involved in preparing this. There's quite a lot that went into that extract in terms of preparing it for you. So we give thanks to those ones there, one Tosan for the part of the editing, and Aisha and Ayana and Yvonne and other placements that were in a broader context, and obviously to my assistant this evening, who is fast asleep, Yasmin. Oh, you know she's cute though. So yeah, we have to build up that brilliance and try and stop our genius from being dealt with on the farm. You know, it's not a farm. Our children are not animals. They shouldn't be on the farm being worked or being herded into stupidity. That's a bit a heavy word. It's a bit late for that, isn't it? But you may be listening to this in the daytime. But when I'm saying this to you, it's shadow time. We're deep in the shadow hours. And so we're flowing like this. Our children shouldn't be herded into stupidity and the destruction of African identity and culture. We shouldn't allow our children to be herded into that. And so, let us build up the genius. there'll come a day, and that day, well, that day is very special. And you know what's coming now. We're coming to the closure of our show. But to say that there'll come a day, we have a very special piece of music to summarize that there will come a day. We're in that day now. It's here. But there's more of the day to see. You know when you're at the beginning of a day and you don't see the sun. It's the beginning of the day. You don't see the sun. There's a point. But for some cultures, still, the beginning of the day is the sunrise. But let us hold the metaphor, the reasoning. The beginning of the day starts at a point before the sun is fully risen. And we are here. That day has come. Black Open University. YehTehwagi Sehlamta. Exiri Masagan Hashima Tawadi Asab. Creator be praised. Respect the warrior idea.
There'll come a day.
Build deep and complete. Welcome to the Black Open University show
on Bless Radio.
There'll come a day. There'll come a day. There'll come a day when the presence of the moment will truly be all there is. It will be all that will be sought after, revealing within life's riches. There'll come a day when we will stand for truly what we believe in, honoring only the truth as we truly see it. And on this day, the rainbows of light will set us free. Deep within our souls, we'll know that only the goodness must show. And on the waves will flow into the midnight we'll go. An abyss of which we'll have no fear, because we'll always know that the Creator is here. here in our souls, here in our hearts, here in our minds, creating within us a certain peace. A peace withstanding all the arrows of persecution, all the vies for validation. A peace we've never ever known in this lifetime, but have many, many, many lifetimes before. Open the door. Open the door to your heart. Release the anger. Release the tension. Release the shame, blame. Release the fear. As you know, the Creator is here in abundance for you, so that you may serve another too. Honor that which you hold near and dear, for that is the only reason you are here. Yes, there'll come a day when all the pain and sorrow will wash away, and on the waves of love you see, that's where we'll be, you and me. You and me. You